Welcome to Nurses with Voices, the podcast where we amplify the voices of nurses everywhere. I'm your host, Dr. Lendra James DNP RN, and I am thrilled to go on this podcast journey with you. As a nurse with over 20-something years of experience, I've witnessed dedication, resilience, and passion that defines our profession. Through this podcast, we aim to educate, empower, and inspire nurses at every stage of their careers. Whether you're a novice nurse navigating the challenges of bedside care, an experienced clinician looking to advance in your field, or dreaming of becoming a nurse entrepreneur, Nurses with Voices is here for you. Join me as we delve into topics such as advancing in nursing, mastering leadership skills, and fostering a supportive community within our profession. Together, we'll explore the triumphs, struggles, and countless opportunities that come with being a nurse. So tune in, subscribe, and let your voice be heard, because here at Nurses with Voices, every nurse has a story worth sharing, and every nurse voice deserves to be amplified. So, welcome back to Nurses with Voices. I am your host, Dr. Lendra James, DNP RN, and I am excited to continue on this series of health and wealth. Today, I have attorney David Abromowitz today, and you guys are in for a special treat. We're going to be talking about healthcare law. David will also be one of our panelists at the upcoming Health and Wealth Expo. So I'm really excited to have you here today, David. Why don't you tell the people just a little bit about you, who you are, where you're from, and we'll get started.
Well, let me first say thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here and talk about healthcare law. I'm David Abromowitz. I've been practicing healthcare law for about 30 years. I live in Columbus, Ohio. My practice is kind of soup to nuts for healthcare providers, healthcare extenders. I do mostly corporate work, but we all know with healthcare law, there's an extra layer of regulatory compliance you've got to deal with, and that's where I come in. Besides doing healthcare provider work, which is near and dear to my heart, I also do work with healthcare systems and healthcare entities.
Nice. So you definitely help healthcare professionals start their practices, whatever medical practices and such. I know there's been a huge influx of, med spa openings, different type of concierge business opening. So tell me, what does the audience need to know? If they're a healthcare professional, if they're a nurse and they're thinking about starting their own healthcare, business, consulting business, or medical practice, what are some key considerations they really need to look for?
Well, there's a couple of them. First and foremost, you need to get a good, experienced healthcare lawyer who knows what he or she is talking about. As I said earlier, corporate transactions in the world of healthcare, there's a lot of extra layers. It's not like opening up a normal business, a bowling alley or a shoe store or a restaurant. There are things you just can't do in healthcare law that you could do in opening just a general business. So having a good healthcare lawyer, also having a very experienced accountant is very important. Because there's tax issues and tax reasons to get them involved. So don't try and do your taxes on your own. That's a very, very bad idea. And then also make sure that you talk with somebody about a budget, because the businesses fail because they're just undercapitalized. You're going to have not just costs for a lawyer and costs for an accountant, but there's advertising costs. If you're going to be a mobile practice or a brick and mortar practice, there's lease costs. So having enough startup capital to make your business work is also very important.
Nice. So thank you for that. So when you talk about starting a business, I know there's a choice of legal structures, right? You have to keep in mind what type of legal structure. I know in starting my business, I had no idea what legal structure meant and the different entities. So can you walk us through choosing, or the formation, like how can someone make sure that they choose the right legal structure for their business?
That's a great question, Lendra. I think you start first off of what state you live in, because there is something out there for nurses, for healthcare providers that are not physicians, not MDs or DOs, called the corporate practice of medicine. And in those states, it makes it very difficult for a nurse or a physician assistant to own a medical practice. That's the whole point of the corporate practice of medicine, that physicians have to own the medical practices. So that will determine a lot about your structure. Now, you can in states where there aren't the corporate practice of medicine, it makes it easier for structure. So there are two types of structure. There's a professional corporation, which is a normal corporation, and there's something called a limited liability company, which is my preference. It's a much easier structure, limited liability companies, and there's less formalities with the state's regulations. However, it does depend on what state you're in. So in a corporate practice of medicine state, you're going to have both. You're going to have a professional corporation, and then you're going to have a limited liability company. And we can talk about that a little bit later. In non-corporate practice of medicine states, where if I wanted to, I could open a medical practice. My choice of entity is a limited liability company, because it's very easy to form those. There's no reporting requirements, and the formalities are much easier to deal with and much easier structure.
Thank you. That's great. That's awesome. So, what do you think are some of the legal pitfalls? I know a lot of people, and when I say a lot of people, I can attest to, when I've noticed or witnessed others forming their businesses, a lot of them, they've used LegalZoom or Legal Shield, and please, I don't want to get censored here, and I'm not saying that those are not, okay, entities to use. However, when it comes to really structuring and forming your business, what do you think are some of the legal pitfalls that healthcare professionals do, and how can they avoid that? And I guess this is kind of a two-part question. And one of the reasons why I say that is I know sometimes healthcare professionals have used those entities, and then it's kind of come back to bite them, right? They've had to go back and get a lawyer, and now it's more money, more cost for them. So can you talk a bit about that aspect of it, of using those type of companies, and also how that segues into some of the legal pitfalls?
Well, the biggest pitfall is what I've always told my clients is, you practice medicine and I'll practice law. Mm-hmm. And I get it. Nobody likes paying lawyers. We are expensive, but we know what we're doing. And if you get the right lawyer involved, it makes things so much easier. So people who try and do it on their own, going on the internet and Googling how to set up a medical practice, LegalZoom and those sites can work for some simple stuff, but the layers of healthcare law create a lot of issues. So the biggest pitfall for startup medical practices is trying to do it by yourself, because you can either pay, it's the old saying, you can pay me a little bit now, which you may not think's a little bit, I get it, or a lot later when there's a big problem. Because remember, what you're doing when you're getting these businesses is you're bringing your medical license, your nursing license, your PA license into play. So you're putting a lot on the line. It's just not the monetary investment. But if you do things wrong, you're going to get a knock on the nursing board. You're going to get a knock on your licensing board, and you got a bigger problem. The thing about these infusion clinics and med spas, which are wonderful investments and they're booming all over the country, is states are starting to take a look at them because they're so active. And so some states are getting very restrictive, and they're like, well, there's been 150 med spas that just opened up in the state of California. And so they're going to start investigating and knocking on the door and asking for your corporate paperwork and asking for your agreements. And if there's a problem, then they'll inform your licensing board. So the biggest pitfall is, don't try and do this on your own. And because it's just not what you guys have gone to school to become professionals and experts in your field, and that's what you're good at. You would never come to me if you needed to get an ID put in, because I wouldn't know what I was doing. So, and it's the funniest thing, because I've dealt with healthcare professionals all my life. They're really good at what they do because you guys are alpha personalities, you're strong, you're smart, and you think you can do it all. And I respect that. That's why you're good at what you do. But so many doctors, so many nurses, so many physician assistants, so they all think they can do the law on their own. And these days, there's so much regulatory oversight. You've got Big Brother at the state looking over your shoulder. You've got the federal government looking over your shoulder. You've got the IRS looking over your shoulder. And if you just set it up the right way the first time, yes, it's going to cost money. You can take a deep breath, because that's our job to make sure you're protected, and then go about and growing your business and becoming successful. So that is the biggest pitfall, just trying to do it on your own. I see it, and there's a lot of times I'll get involved after the fact, and then there's a lot of cleanup. We can fix it, but it's better just to do it the right way from go. And so
Right.
that's the biggest takeaway from today for your listeners, is that, you do your job and find the experts to do the stuff that's going to help you become successful in your business. And that's a really good lawyer and a really good accountant. And you all do very well.
I completely agree. I can also appreciate how you mentioned regulatory compliance. What are some, specific regulations or licensing requirements that healthcare professionals, nurses in particular, can make sure that they have in order to ensure compliance?
Sure. Well, like I said initially, I don't want to repeat myself too much, but knowing your jurisdiction, the state you're in, so understanding if you have to deal with the corporate practice of medicine or not, that's a big one. It's a lot easier if you don't have to, but a lot of states have it. So that's number one. And then it's the type of procedures you're going to be offering. If it's just, easy infusions, that makes it simpler. But if you're going to have some controlled substances on the premises, you're going to do injectables, you're going to getting a physician involved, understanding you have to have a physician who's going to supervise you and have that deal in place. Then it's all the forms. You got to make sure your informed consent's correct. You got to make sure your HIPAA authorizations and your patient intake forms are correct. If you're going to do telehealth, having the right forms and drafted, and you can get this stuff online. There are companies that will provide it to you, but I'm telling you right now, those companies are not looking after you. They're there, it's a mass production. It may not apply to the state that you're in. So you have to be really careful about that. And that's why I'm saying you don't want to cut any corners in healthcare law, because there's just so much nuances. So understanding your corporate structure, but understanding the different types and then if you of compliance you've got to do, in some of these structures, you've got to have a physician that's part owner with you if you're in a corporate practice of medicine state. So all those things are all of them are important. There's not one step you can skip, because it's like a chain. You're only as strong as your weakest link, and so if you skip a step, it's going to cause you a problem. So having the right forms, having the right physician involved if you need one, understanding the type of procedure you're going to offer, and then there's state law and there's federal law. Some states and even some counties in those states have different types of registrations you've got to apply for licensing. If you're a mobile unit, there's some licensures you might have to be a mobile unit. You just can't park your truck someplace or start going door to door. You've got to apply with a license for that. So there's a lot of pieces, and I don't want to make your audience seem like it's overwhelming. It's not, because that's why you hire someone like me, because we'll walk you through it. It's not as complicated as it sounds, but if you're trying to piece together through, I'm going to use LegalZoom and I'm going to Google how do I start an IV infusion clinic, and you're going to try and figure it out. That's where it starts getting very, very complicated for your folks. So I would just say that the compliance piece is a big one that everyone's got to be aware of.
Thank you for that. And that's what I was looking for. That's definitely what I was looking to hear. And that's what people need to understand, and that's what they have to understand, that the nuances that, yes, it can sound overwhelming, especially when you're trying to do it yourself. Like, everyone wants to go to, Google and YouTube University, as I like to call it, and they want to try to figure this all out. And unfortunately, it's really not that simple. And that's the beauty of having an attorney. Like you said, you can just simplify everything. And there's a lot in starting a business. So let the experts take care of that. And like you said, healthcare professionals, we're experts in what we do, right?
Absolutely.
And the
Yeah,
part of the problem is we're so used to doing everything,
that is
especially
true.
nurses, right? Like one of the going jokes has always been that we're everything. We're engineering, right? We're housekeeping, we're dietary. Like that's been one of the going jokes because we do everything, especially, those night shift nurses, when, there's a skeleton crew on. But I say that to say healthcare workers are notorious for wanting to do a lot of things on their own. But in these cases, we definitely need to make sure that we're taking the right steps.
Yeah, and there's also parts we talk about later. Like you're going to create this wonderful thing. There's a logo. There's proprietary pieces of this too. You want to trademark your name. You want to copyright your name. You don't want somebody using your logo or stealing your proprietary information. So there's another piece of this too, because a lot of clients I work with want to grow. They have one location. They start maybe with a mobile unit, then they go to a brick and mortar, then they have two brick and mortars, and they start growing, and then all of a sudden you've got 5 locations. And so protecting that proprietary information and protecting the hard work and the money you're going to spend to do that is also important. So copywriting things and trademarking things and making sure everything is yours and no one can take it from you, because people will take it from you.
Right.
So and those are and these can all be done in stages too. I don't want people to think that we got to do everything at once. We take it in steps, and you got to figure out where you want to start and where you want to go. And your business could start, hey, I just want to do IV infusion, but then, hey, injectables sound like a good idea. And then maybe I want to get into maybe a clinic type environment and maybe start expanding. These businesses are strong businesses, and they're popping up in a lot of states, and people are being successful at them for a reason.
Right. But people are taking their power back and
Yep.
they're looking into their health and their wellness and they're looking, they're loving the med spa industry and what's all being offered. And it's a win. It's a win-win, right? You get to feel empowered with your self-care and healthcare professionals get to do something that they love and do something different as well
Yeah,
outside of the traditional setting of nursing. So that's awesome.
it is.
Something that you said that spoke to me when you mentioned how people are trying to take things from you, right? And so what's interesting is when I first opened my business and when I was, looking to collaborate with, different businesses, I got a lot of, questions of, well, what would their commission be? Or, they wanted something from my price. Can you talk a little bit about Stark laws and the anti-kickback laws and how does that, or does one have anything to do with the other?
Well, yeah. So I don't want to get too deep in it because it gets not that your audience can't understand it, but that's a whole separate segment that we could spend a few hours on. But
Okay.
so Stark Law is about having a interest in an entity that you refer patients to. Now, there is something called designated health services, and there's a list in the law about what services apply. But so in this case, I don't think Stark would apply here because we're not a designated health service. But um, and then there's also the government receivable piece. A lot of these laws apply because you're taking Medicare or Medicaid money. Now, a lot of these businesses that are opening up lender are, which they should be, don't want to get into insurance. A lot of it's cash based, so that takes that piece out of it. Anti-kickback is more as, hey, I'll refer you a patient, and wink, wink, you pay me some money, and we all work together. But again, I think the government gets involved with that because they don't want you using taxpayer money inappropriately. What you got to be careful about in these kind of startups is something called fee splitting. So fee splitting is not allowed in most states, and that's where I'll say, hey, Lendra, I'm going to send you John Doe for a patient, and you're going to make $2,000 off that patient. So when you get that $2,000, pay me $1,000. You can't do that. You're not allowed a fee split with a medical practice. Okay. So what you got to do is set up, if you're going to go like into a spa or a salon and use their space to do your infusions, you want to have a contract in place that's going to outline a flat fee arrangement that makes it clear this is what you're going to get paid, whether you work on one patient or 50 patients. But if you do a patient by patient splitting of, sharing of fees, that's where you can get a lot of trouble in these deals, and I've seen that. So fee splitting is there most I think all states have some type of fee splitting statute. So you're not permitted to, like, you could do that in some other kinds of businesses, but in healthcare they don't want you fee splitting, especially with non-healthcare professionals. That's a bad one. But a lot of these salons want to bring these infusion centers in, which is a great thing. But they want to set it, first off, they don't do any kind of agreement in place, which I strongly say no to. You want always something documented, and it's got to meet criteria that is either usually it's just a flat fee to cut a deal, whether it's a flat fee based on renting the space or just a flat fee. I'll pay you $3,000 for the day, and no matter how many patients you see, and that kind of thing. But if you're doing it on a per click per patient basis, and you're saying, hey, John Doe paid you 2,000, I'll pay you 1,000, that's where you get into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Thank you for clearing that up, because I think it's a lot of, there's a lot of, to your point, yes, because as healthcare professionals, we're adding value, right? So if we're coming to your, your gym or your salon or wherever we're coming, and we're providing a professional service, to your clients, and we're adding value because it's something, especially if you're a non-healthcare professional, you can't add this, right? So,
That's right.
What a lot of times what you see is just what I just said, right? Is, oh, okay, well, what's the percentage that we can get? So nothing.
That's absolutely correct. Yes. Yes. I would say too that with these deals, a lot of these deals just go unchecked too. Like you'll talk to somebody or hear from another person in the business. Well, I'm doing it this way and it's working just great. Well, that's wonderful because they haven't been caught yet. So just I mean, and most people don't know any better, and that's just because there's so many of these deals that are done inappropriately. But you just don't want to be the one individual that's caught. Right. I mean, you want to have peace of mind. So just because someone's doing it that way and they're saying it's fine, I've seen a lot of strange documents. So because some of these vendors they piecemeal the document together through Googling on the internet, or trying to figure out or handwritten document, and it's just a really bad document. So that's where a lawyer comes into place, and just because somebody's doing it that way doesn't necessarily make it right.
Right. Are those documents actually bindable? Those documents that people could just download off the internet?
Well, they can be. I mean, it depends. They can be binding if it's entered into, but if it's an illegal contract, like fee splitting, then no, it can't. It's not binding.
Right. Okay.
Contracts you have to enter into a contract that's a legal document, a legal deal. So it's just everyone's trying to avoid the scary lawyer, and I get it. I really I've been doing this a long time, and I hear it every day, and I get it. It's not right. We do cost a lot of money, but I especially in healthcare, at the end of the day, we give you guys a lot of peace of mind for what you're getting into. And
absolutely,
it's not fun paying us. I understand that, but the peace of mind's worth it.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. To your point, I think it's the peace of mind, knowing that, okay, I have an attorney in place. I have an attorney who put together these documents, and feeling comfortable knowing that an expert, took care of it and provided me with this information, instead of downloading it off of Google. And
plus there's someone there. That's why you have a good accountant and a good lawyer. If you get some kind of invoice from the state saying you owe back taxes, or the IRS, you go to your accountant and say, hey, you did my taxes for me, solve this problem for me. Same with lawyer. I got a knock on the door from the Secretary of State's office or from the nursing board saying I'm doing something wrong. David, handle this for me. And that's what we do. So, you got to have a kind of a force that's there to protect your business and protect you. So, I'm not here to scare your listeners, but what I will say is it's highly regulatory and highly involved state and federal government with healthcare. And so just be aware of that. It's not a simple business plan. It's not a simple structure. There are a lot of eyes that are on doctors and nurses and the like, because, they kind of assume you're doing it wrong and not doing it right. So it's good to have good people on your side.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Dave, this has been wonderful. Are there any practical tips or anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to mention or that you think the listener should know?
I think I think putting a good business plan together is always important. That's something that you can get maybe from other nurses who've done this, or with an accountant or with a lawyer. But I think mapping out your plan and kind of having a roadmap of how you want to do this is really, really important. It's like putting together a diagnostic plan for a patient who needs care. You're just not going to kind of willy-nilly it. So understanding the nuances of starting. I mean, you're starting up a business which has its own nuances to it, and then but now you're making it a healthcare business.
Right.
So in some cases, you need a doctor involved with this. You got to find a doctor you can work with that will be your supervisor. It's a good person, won't charge an arm and a leg for his time. So I just think putting a really good plan together on paper is a really good start to a good and healthy business.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to your point about that need for a doctor, there are a lot of companies out here who will provide you with a medical provider for your business. However, what would you say, or what are your thoughts? I know I have some thoughts about this, but what are your thoughts about those companies that will provide you a medical provider?
So I think those companies serve a purpose. They really do. What I would recommend if you want to go that way, that will help you set up your business and get you a position, is whatever documents they supply to you. Again, have your own lawyer look at those documents. Those are documents that are prepared by that company. They're not necessarily, not that they're looking after you. Their job is to make money. They provide, so it's hard to find a physician sometimes, so it's a source they provide. But understanding how you get into that contract, how you get out of that contract, if they do something wrong, will they indemnify you and protect you if they do something wrong? So having the agreements that they present to you is very, very important to be reviewed. Would be my strongest bit of advice on that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I definitely couldn't agree more. Well, David, thank you so much. Tell me, how can people contact you if they need a healthcare attorney looking to start up their business?
Well, sure. Well, I have a email address, dabromowitz@taftlaw.com. You can also reach me on my phone, 614-220-0232. I'm happy to follow up with any questions from any of your viewers and help if I can. And it's been a real pleasure talking about this stuff. I do this every day, so I enjoy talking. I know it's not, I do enjoy talking about it. I really enjoy talking with people who they're trying to better themselves, better the healthcare system, help out patients, and that means a lot to me too. So I'm happy to do this kind of work.
Absolutely. I love it and I appreciate it. So thank you so much for coming on today's episode. So there you have it, attorney David Abromowitz. You have his contact information if you're looking to start up a healthcare medical practice. So until next time, make sure I'll see you guys in the next episode. Until next time, make sure you stay empowered, inspired, and educated. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Take care.